All right, the scandal around Joe Biden's use of the auto pen is growing worse by the day. In an interview with the New York Times, it was published this morning, Biden actually admitted that he did not approve each individual pardon. The former president claimed he, quote, made every decision about clemencies, but later admitted that he had his staff replicate his signature because he said, quote, we're talking about a lot of people. And even more alarming, how hard is it to sign? I mean, come on. More alarming, according to the New York Times, Biden discussed pardons with his advisors on January the 19th, his last night in office, and after messages circulated among his advisors summarizing the meeting, Biden's then chief of staff, Jeff Zients, sent an email reading, quote, I approve the use of the auto pen for the execution of all the following pardons. Now, the New York Times report also says that Biden put parameters for clemency, but not specific cases. That is not the same as deciding who you pardon or who you give clemency to. Were they actually admitting here that he didn't make the ultimate decision? And then if so, that would raise the possibility they may not be valid. Also tonight, according to a bombshell report from justthenews.com, the FBI now seeking answers to years of weaponization of the federal government, opening the door for a special prosecutor to look into everything, starting with the Russia collusion hoax all the way through Jack Smith and what impact it may have had on the elections intervening. That would be 16, 20, and 24. Here with more, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer, justthenews.com founder, editor-in-chief, investigative reporter John Solomon. James Comer, start with you. You read the New York Times piece. What I read is that Joe Biden put parameters in place but didn't make the ultimate decision on every single person involved in this. Would that render those clemencies, those pardons, unlawful?
I think so. I think it would be a hard pitch in front of a court of law to try to defend what Joe Biden just admitted to the New York Times, that he didn't know exactly who all was getting pardons or not. He didn't know who was being pardoned with the use of his auto pen. And that's the whole basis of this investigation. This is just the pardons. What about the executive orders? I mean, there was no process that we have found thus far, and we've brought in 4 people thus far in our interviews and depositions, no defined process by which Joe Biden was the one saying, yes, use this auto pen to sign my name on this pardon or this executive order. I mean, Sean, we're just talking about signing your name, one signature. So it doesn't even take into account whether or not he was mentally able to understand what he was even signing. So this is bad, and I think this puts all of those pardons in peril from the Biden administration.
Let me go to your story, John Solomon, and you wrote a very long, comprehensive, investigative piece, how the FBI opened a case several weeks ago under the new FBI director, Kash Patel, and that this would be a grand conspiracy case on the issue of weaponization. That is a topic we have discussed at length on this program. We literally spent 3 years on this show. You were a part of our ensemble cast: Greg Jarrett, Sarah Carter. I'm going to miss the names of too many people, so I won't continue. Unpeeling every layer of the onion to get to the truth when the rest of the media got it wrong and then ended up getting Pulitzer Prizes. We were proven right. We've been vindicated again and again. We were right about FISA abuse. We were right about the double standard in terms of top secret classified information. But what I'm reading in your piece tells me that starting with Russia and the Russia hoax, all the way through Jack Smith, we're talking about every incident of weaponization used against Donald Trump and how it could be part of a broader, grander conspiracy theory, a conspiracy that actually took place and law-breaking involved in it. And that also the statute of limitations would not be applicable in this case as a result. And this would include names like Comey and Clapper and Brennan. Take it from there.
Yeah, and Barack Obama, too, because he was in on these early meetings. So what the FBI has done is treated the last decade of weaponization, all the great work that James Comer has turned up through his Oversight Committee, and put it into a timetable and said, this looks like an ongoing conspiracy, a wash, rinse, repeat cycle of Democrat gets in legal trouble. Hillary Clinton in her email case, Hunter Biden with his taxes, Joe Biden with his classified documents. They're let off the hook even when there is extraordinary evidence suggesting they shouldn't be left off the hook. And then a parallel track occurs where the Republican, in this case Donald Trump, is investigated falsely for things like Russia collusion, Ukrainian interference, his own documents at his home in Mar-a-Lago. This is a criminal conspiracy. By treating it as a conspiracy, you eliminate the 5-year statutes on individual crimes. If something happened in 2016, but it was part of an ongoing conspiracy that continued with Jack Smith raiding Donald Trump's home at Mar-a-Lago, it can be charged in the larger conspiracy, even though if you tried to charge it in an individual case, you wouldn't get it. Furthermore, you could also change the venue. Remember the troubles John Durham had bringing prosecutions in Washington, D.C.? Jurors wouldn't convict, even if they thought there was criminality going on. In this case, you could pick a place like Florida, where Jack Smith did the raid on Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago house, and say that's where we're putting the grand jury. You get a more fair jury pool, a more fair grand jury pool. It gives Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, an enormous amount of flexibility to do something historic. Finally bring some accountability for all the things that Chairman Comer and Chairman Johnson, Chairman Grassley, Chairman Jordan have brought and proved to the American people.
Yeah, okay. Bring us a little deeper into this, and more specifically, tell us what this might entail. Who might be appointed special counsel? How long this investigation is likely to take, and how involved will it be in terms of exposing something that, you know, we have talked at length on this program about, maybe more than any other show, and that is how the deep state has used these three-letter agencies have been using their power, abusing their power. I don't care if it's the 51 intel agents that knew nothing about Hunter's laptop. I don't care if it's Russia. I don't care if it's a false valuation of Mar-a-Lago. I don't care if it's a double standard when it comes to top-secret classified documents, how Trump was treated versus Biden versus Hillary Clinton. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah. There is. There's a couple things. First, because of the great work of Chairman Comer, Chairman Jordan, Chairman Johnson, Chairman Grassley, most of the evidence is already available for the Justice Department. You're not going to have to pry it out. Now, there are two pieces of evidence that Donald Trump could declassify that are still classified that would be explosive, and they would put it at the start of the conspiracy. Hillary Clinton is cleared from her email scandal by James Comey shortly after the FBI got new classified evidence from an intelligence agency saying there might be more criminality. It never got investigated. It got swept under the rug. The evidence exists in a classified annex in the Justice Department investigations documents. If Donald Trump were to declassify that, he would put this investigation on fast forward. Same thing, the day that the same time Donald Trump is being investigated at the start of Russia collusion, an intelligence intercept comes in saying that Hillary Clinton approved doing a Russian collusion dirty trick on Donald Trump, essentially sticking a fake scandal on him. Instead of the FBI taking that into account, they open up in that very allegation and evidence, which defies all investigative rules that the FBI has. If Donald Trump declassified those two pieces of intelligence, a special prosecutor would have a jump start. This could be wrapped up in a couple of years. You can pick anybody. You don't have to pick someone in the Justice Department. You could pick a Senate-confirmed person like Lee Zeldin and get a right, going.
And he's a lawyer, so that would be a good choice in my view.
He's a lawyer and a prosecutor,
Yeah, good point. Yep. All right, thank you both. John Solomon, thank you. James Comer. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.